All right, boys, so I have another doozy one for you. So as you guys have heard me mention this before, I had a lot of bad news and information I wanted to put on this channel. I definitely want to thank the subscribers for sending me these stories, but I didn't want to upload this right before the 4th of July because a lot of these stories and what's going on right now is a Debbie Downer. I mean, just totally just pull your zen and all your energy straight out of you. Like Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat ripping out your spirit or your soul on you. So anyway, this was sent to me by a fellow subscriber, and this story is taking place in, I believe, Modesto or San Jose, Northern California. You guys are getting your own dose of drama now. They have all these new ordinances that they want to implement right now in Northern California. So I'll go over some of these. Obviously, these are the normal ones that they have in California. $1,000 violation, $2,000, $3,000 violation. But I played a little bit of this video when I had that F10 Pyro on my channel the other day when we did a live stream. But what's so really bad and unique about this situation is not only do they want to fine you, not only do they want to get a drone, but they want to find neighbors and people who watch you shoot fireworks. They want to find your neighbors and people who you know for watching. So imagine a situation where you're down the street, somebody walks outside, they like your fireworks or maybe they don't or whatever, but they want to find them if they don't report you. Now, typically, to my understanding, most law officers, or when they give citations, they have to cite you personally. And in some cases, what they're trying to do now is they're trying to get away from citing a home or citing. They want to start citing more or less individuals because they also want to fine your landlord. Because if they can't catch you, or let's say you have a big party, they don't know who to go after. I mean, I had a friend years ago, she was cited for something, but she never produced her ID. She was visiting a friend. They gave her a citation, but it wasn't a proper citation because she didn't live there. It wasn't her address. So she wasn't properly served. And so they're implementing policies like this to fine your landlord, or if you, well, obviously, yeah, if you're renting a house or apartment, they want to fine your landlord. They want to possibly fine your HOA. I believe there are some talks in there about this. This video is about, I cut it down from about 5 hours. It was about 5 hours or so. Cut it down to about a good 2 hours. And I listened to about half of this stuff. But they want to do whatever they possibly can to cite you for shooting fireworks, get your neighbors. And then also, too, they want to hold strip mall landlords and property owners responsible. Because let's say you pull into a swap meet or a strip mall where there's like a Target and several other businesses, and they don't lock down that parking lot. They want to find the business owner for that too, because they can't catch you. So they want to get somebody because they're looking to get funding for all this stuff. And obviously in SoCal, we know that the reason why they were hitting hard too is because, remember, but California in general has been locked down the longest. And you figure when people are at home not doing much of anything, they start to run out of funding. And in addition to another story that I'll probably be doing a little bit later today, they want to start selling illegal fireworks too. Now, that's not a part of this story, but that's all the crap going down in California right now. So I'm actually going to play this video. You guys can watch it. I'm just going to talk a little bit over it. I'm not going to narrate all through this because this video is 2 hours long. But keep in mind, when you watch this video, I want you to pay attention to their body language. Pay attention to some of the remarks and all the little things that they're trying to do to fine people for shooting fireworks. And of course, fining innocent bystanders just for watching. And if they can't find you, they want to fine your landlord because they're responsible for the property. That's just so un-American. I mean, I don't know where this country is going to, or especially California in general. But look at these people. This is all they had to discuss for this whole 2 hour duration. It's about all the things they could possibly do. And this gentleman sitting over here on the left, I'm not sure what his name is. You know, he was objected to a lot of this stuff, you know, as far as what they could do. But they also want to incorporate drones flying over fireworks shows and stuff like that. And, you know, legally, you're not even required, or you're not even allowed to fly a drone at night. That's part of the FAA registrations. Now, unless they've actually changed some of those exemptions, you're not even supposed to fly a drone at night because of how you can't see and all this other kind of stuff. But keep in mind, too, like even if a drone was flying through some of these fireworks shows, chances are, you know, maybe a mortar could possibly hit it or whatever. It comes down and then it causes additional injuries and stuff. Just something else to keep in mind. But these are all the tactics that they want to imply or employ just for you enjoying your 4th of July holiday season. Now, this isn't something they're planning on doing year round. This is something they only want to do around the 4th of July. So I definitely want to give a huge shout out thanks to the subscriber who sent me this video because he couldn't believe it. And I know some of you were like, yeah, Keo, you guys keep that crap down there in Southern California. You know, like right after that Ontario explosion happened. But yeah, the laws and the measures that they want to implement up north in Northern California are a lot stricter, a lot harder. They don't want to play fair. They're just trying to do whatever they could possibly do to get some money. I mean, all these individuals. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through really quick before I let you guys hear this entire video. These are all the people here just sitting around conjuring up all the different ordinances and plans and things they can do to penalize your neighbors and use scare tactics to report you. And if they enjoy a fireworks show, let's get them too. And then they want to find your neighbors. And then too, if you're the homeowner and you invite guests over and they can't pinpoint who shot the firework they want to get somebody. They don't care who it is. They just want to get somebody. So that's one of the reasons why they want to find the homeowner or the party assembler, because they can't catch the person who actually did it. And legally, they can only hold the person responsible for shooting the firework. Now, the other problem with this is, you guys know when you get cited for transporting fireworks or caught with fireworks, if you're shooting whatever, and they say, hey, here's your citation, you had 300 or 400 pounds. Remember when they had that explosion a few weeks ago? Was it before the 4th of July? Yeah, it was before the 4th of July. And they couldn't calculate how much weight or the powder in those soda can size fireworks that they set off, and it blew up that city street and it blew up that truck. Well, if the hazmat team or the bomb squad couldn't determine how much powder they were putting in there to safely detonate, how accurate are they when they write a citation to you saying you have 400 or 500 pounds? I mean, if they can't figure it out in a controlled circumstance to know that their bomb containment unit couldn't withhold so many pounds of flash powder, how much accurate are they when they write you a citation saying, hey, you have 400 or 500 pounds worth of fireworks, and that's what we're going to cite you for? Because for each additional amount, I believe your citation goes up when you have to prove yourself in court. And so that's another topic for another day, as far as fighting citations and their accuracy when they're telling you how many pounds of fireworks they're writing you up for. Because they obviously couldn't get it right. But anyway, back to this subject matter in regards to this city council. So as you can see, this took place on May 11th, 2021. And a lot of these districts, I believe this was San Jose, Modesto, up north near Sacramento, they're just trying to figure out what they could do to get some money out of you. They really don't care. They hate fireworks. I mean, if you listen to some of these people talk, I mean, it's like, Jesus, like, I mean, did you grow up going to Disneyland? I mean, is your husband at home satisfying you, or your wife at home satisfying you? I mean, really, like, what kind of person do you have to be to just go after people like this in this kind of manner? And keep in mind, this is not something that happens in California. This is stuff that happens in the Midwest, Missouri, and other places where people can shoot fireworks a lot of times year round, and they don't have as many restrictions as California does. So just, oh, here comes another one. Yeah, she's another firework hater. I think maybe, maybe she's not getting satisfied when she goes out every now and then. But some of these people are just so bloody boring. I really didn't want to post this before the 4th of July, and I'm glad I didn't because, like I said, it is a Debbie Downer. Again, here are all the individuals taking place at this live conference, just discussing everything that's going on, charging the additional fees, illegal fireworks. They want to look, there's the social host ordinance right there. That's the one where they want to hold somebody responsible for whoever hosted the party because they can't catch whoever did it. So imagine your next door neighbor holding a party in this particular case. They couldn't catch any of them, but because you're outside watching, they want to come blame you for whatever the case might be. In fact, let me zoom in on this a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. Define social host. Define public versus private property. Define and impose liability. Establish and provide billing mechanism. Outline administrative appeal process. Amend 2020-2021 schedule of fees and charges. That's what all this stuff is about. Let me see. I can't really see their diagram, too much that's over here. I know they got some other information, but go ahead, listen to this video. I'm gonna leave it up for you guys. That's the end of my little rant. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I mean, we thought SoCal was bad, right? I mean, but nah. So in this little neck of the woods, they really want to do a number on everybody. So again, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's the end for my rant. Go ahead and enjoy this video starting now.
Ordinance work plan stats report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So if we're ready, I'll share my screen. And can you see it?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So I want to thank Mayor and Council for this opportunity to deliver the fireworks ordinance work plan status update. I am Deputy Chief Hector Estrada, and with me presenting will be Captain Jason Ta of the Police Department in Support Services Division. And so this presentation covers the preparation and actions in response to the 2021 New Year and Lunar New Year TET celebrations and our status on our progress for the assigned tasks that we received on October 27th, 2020. And the Fireworks Ordinance Work Plan Status Report dated April 6th is available on the City of San Jose website and through the council agenda. I first would like to start by reviewing our program components and the goals for the effort that we had for the reduction of illegal fireworks use in the city. The program components remain education and outreach, and this is essentially for us to reach as many people as possible through our multimedia with the relevant message in all of the appropriate languages that we can. And next, reporting, and that is the effort to improve our data quality recently and increase the ease in reporting while increasing the number of actionable reports, hopefully resulting in citation and warnings. And then third, the enforcement, and as is a challenge with most other cities and jurisdictions, the most challenging part of the components that we have as our mission. The goals of the program are to reduce injuries and fires, to decrease the use of illegal fireworks activity, and increase the number of actionable reports. And we added a fourth this time around so that we could make sure that people were aware of the new ordinance or the new changes in the fireworks fines. So it's been a pretty busy 7-ish months, and we have presented to council first in October and then December. We completed a number of work plan items, and we have collaborated with our core groups and interdepartmentally and interagency. And so we have met regularly. We have met with the City Information Technology Department, City Attorney's Office, Office of Administration Policy and Intergovernmental Relations, as well as other outside entities. We explored improvements to the online reporting tool in a partnership with the City Information Technology Department, and they reported out on the tool integration for San Jose 311. I'll mention a little bit more about that later. we expanded our campaign messaging and provided New Year and Lunar New Year education and outreach, so specifically targeted for those communities and that time frame. And we reported back to public safety, finance, and strategic support. And now we're here before you. So PISFIS on April 15th and then today on the 11th. So I'd like to recap what we completed as far as work plan items that we had on our docket. And I'd like to say that start with the increase in the violations or the fines for violations. As we screened local jurisdictions and across the state, we were able to recommend and had approved increase in a first violation fine from $500 to $1,000. Second violation fine within 18 months, 7 to 2,000, and then 1,000 for a third violation, moved to 3,000. So we are amongst the highest in the Bay Area. So the cost of actually violating the fireworks ordinance in San Jose is greater than it's more significant for us. So we presented, or a presentation to council by Information Technology Department was provided in January, and the digital strategy roadmap for San Jose 311 report provided a clear assessment of the integration possibilities that we had for potentially integrating with the 311 app, and the feasibility in incorporating the online reporting tool was also included in that, and it helped us identify their current priorities. Also, we had the fireworks ordinance work plan status report was reinstated to PISFIS committee as their normal work plan item. And we will be presenting next as 4.2, the ordinance for social hosts and responsibilities. I will pass this over to Captain Ta so he can talk a little bit about the proposed enforcement strategy.
Thank you, Chief Estrada. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Jason Ta. I am the San Jose captain for the Support Services Division at the Police Department. So I'll talk a little bit about our enforcement plan for this 4th of July. So we're going to use a combination of traditional as well as some non-traditional policing strategies. This will address the purchasing and selling of fireworks, the possessions of fireworks, and also, of course, the ignition, the igniting, discharging of fireworks. We have also been budgeted, I believe, about $37,000 for 7 enforcement campaigns that we plan to do. 2 being addressing the buying and selling of fireworks. I believe 4 to address the actual weekend night violations, proposed 1 weekend before and 2 weekends before, and the 3rd one dealing with the actual day of the event, which will be the day of the 4th of July. So we have plans in place for all 3 of those different strategies. Additionally, we plan to the extent possible, have videos or some sort of images that we're going to hastily put into a public service announcement, a PSA, so we can use that as additional deterrence, playing that on our social media platforms so that the public as well as potential offenders are aware that the police department is actually doing an aggressive enforcement campaign this year.
So thank you, Captain Ta. And with that, I will move to our work plan items that we have in progress. So for those items, first, the mobile and online reporting tools in the San Jose 311. So it will not be integrated into San Jose 311 yet. Baseline or of interim changes to the existing tool to address incompletes and insufficients online reports that can be accomplished within the current budget and staffing will be incorporated into the 2021 4th of July reporting period. We're working with our fire IT to accomplish those. Interjurisdictional efforts. So the staff in the Office of Administration, Policy, and Intergovernmental Relations reached out to partners at the county, state level and city's federal lobbyists about potential legislation to ban fireworks and increase the prosecution of violators. Well, there is a acknowledgement that this is a significant problem. attention of the city's partners and all levels of government has been focused on COVID response and mitigation. And also the fire department reached out to Morgan Hill and Gilroy. We found that Morgan Hill had raised their fines for fireworks violations, and Gilroy had planned to permit safe and sane fireworks on this 4th of July. Additional funding. So we did look into grants, but found of those that we researched, none were in alignment with the scope or the parameters established by the relevant or by the programs that we looked at. And we will, however, continue to research opportunities to support the illegal fireworks law enforcement funding. Our outreach campaign on cultural competency analysis. So the city manager's office of communications, in partnership with the fire department's communication staff, will review the fireworks campaign for cultural relevancy and this summer, and we'll plan to launch a refreshed campaign and the materials in 2022. And our review of the citation protocols is the due process requirements for fireworks citation is currently under review by the city attorney's office. So those are all items that are currently underway within our work plan. So taking a look at the reporting period that we had for New Year and Lunar New Year, it lasted 53 days, and it spanned from December 23rd through February 14th. And through the online reporting tool, we received 342 reports, 21 of which were actionable and resulted in 20 warnings and 1 citation. It was a slight increase, but it still was right around the same level that we had last 4th of July. Code enforcement staff evaluated and followed up with all of those reporting parties that resulted in some type of actionable report. The fire calls for fireworks, as listed, were 16, and we had no fires in either structures or vegetation, and we had 1 medical event that was related to fireworks. A majority of our calls were to report on conditions, which essentially is a request to look into an area for smoke or other unknown loud noise, things like that. The fireworks hotline, 301, phone reports, we received 113 calls. 56 were routed through to the online reporting tool, and 23 were answered by San Jose 311 call center staff. And after hours, 34 were forwarded to after hours answering service. One of the things that we did do a little differently and modified was our social media approach. We were able to reach an extra 110,000 people through focused messaging in appropriate languages, and I'll highlight that for a moment. Through members of the fire department and prevention staff were featured in new videos, and they were multilingual educational videos, and they were added to our library, which has now been expanded to include new content for specifically the New Year and Lunar New Year tent celebrations. And these were produced in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. The outcomes are things that we recently achieved, landmarks for this last New Year and tent Lunar New Year. We had increased firework fines that were effective in December as a result of the comparative analysis and council direction. And now, once again, fines in San Jose are amongst the highest in the Bay Area. Our campaign visibility to multilingual audiences. Our PSA video library has expanded, and we can reach a greater number of people in the languages in which they feel the most comfortable. Our targeted social media outreach focused on areas that have histories of high use of illegal fireworks, and we can now reach those areas to fit the demographic for that population. And we will continue to maintain our libraries and in the language diversity that we have. Our media interviews that we were able to, Channel 26 with reporter Vivian Wang on KTSF, we provided a prevention personnel to conduct an interview in Chinese, which we will look for more opportunities like this to send our message through either live or recorded interviews. We had an expanded campaign visibility and stakeholder outreach. A fireworks messaging toolkit was provided to identify stakeholder groups, including the city council, school districts, neighborhood commissions, neighborhood associations, and residents belonging to the city's neighborhood watch and crime prevention CERT groups. And with the mobile app, we made progress. So now we have a better understanding and baseline for standards for future improvement for the online reporting tool. And we have a better understanding of how to modify and meet the minimum fulfillment thresholds that eventually will hopefully help us for 311 integration. So next steps, we're going to continue to meet. The team has met on a regular basis. We continue to work on the online reporting tool and the other work plan items. The police department has in fact enhanced enforcement and for on and before July 4th. And our data-driven messaging campaigns will continue in as many relevant languages and for the specific situations that we reach for 4th of July coming up. And with that, I'd like to acknowledge the participants for this effort. Captain Jason Ta, Police Department. Erica Ray is our Public Information Manager with the Fire Department. Rachel Roberts is Deputy Director of Code Enforcement. And also on her staff from Code Enforcement is Maria Diaz Perez, Oscar Carrillo, Jason Jubilisco, Trevor Gold from City Manager's Office, Carolina Camarena from CMO, Diana Yuan from City Attorney's Office, Jerry Drayson from City Information Technology, and on the line we also have the Assistant Chief and Fire Chief. So we're ready to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for this item. You know, I'm really, I'm hopeful about, I'm wondering if there's ways that you can address with this issue ideas about what was mentioned the last time this item was brought before council is at the state and federal level where the shipment and selling of fireworks is perhaps better monitored, and from our port systems. You know, are we at a time to start, you know, really working on those ideas and practices and looking into that and being able to talk about that here? It was stated that you will not be using the 311 line yet. So, you know, it is a lot of give and take, I understand, in working out, you know, best practices for this issue. And thanks to everyone for their patience. I'm really, as with gun issues, I'm really interested how this can be handled at the state and federal level. And good luck in those efforts. I had a few more things to say that I cannot quite think of. Oh, I do know that I wanted to make a personal thank you to all of you that you have a police person, Officer Estrada, who I think that's his name, who he has an important role in this process, and he seems like a really knowledgeable person who can really be, you know, decent in all sides for this issue. So thank you for that, and just good luck with this issue. It's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's return to council. Councilmember Menace.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to first move to accept the report. So if there's a second.
Second.
Yeah, thank you. Also wanted to say just a deep thank you to Chief Estrada and everyone else, the long laundry list of folks that he mentioned that are really behind a lot of this movement. We appreciate it. Also want to thank that, you know, although it was just simply Blair Beekman that made some comments, which, you know, always appreciate his presence. I know that there are many residents who are watching this meeting and paying attention to the comments being made and watching the work that's done, that appreciate the work from the fire department to the police department to code enforcement and everyone else. So just wanted to say that we're listening to you all and we appreciate your efforts to move this issue forward. And lastly, let me just acknowledge that obviously with many of the topics that we discuss at council, there's a lot going on. We just had a topic on middle income housing, dealing with the pandemic. And so I greatly appreciate the staff's ability to move some of these issues forward all the while. I mean, quite frankly, it seems like the world's burning down. And I think it's very important that we're able to do that, and we're able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think you guys are doing an excellent job, and I very much appreciate it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just going to echo the comments of Councilmember Jimenez. Thank you to staff for your work on this, to the Stop Illegal Fireworks Coalition, a lot of those members leading out of my district, and I know they've been working hard on pushing the city to try and better our efforts on addressing the use of illegal fireworks. And just I know it's certainly, as we're prepping for the 4th of July holiday, as that leads up, it's I think a benefit to be able to hear this update, and I am even more excited about the next item, the social host ordinance, something that I know myself and the mayor had been pushing for a couple of years, and so look forward to that coming forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Chief Estrada and Captain Ta for your reports and work on this issue. Councilmember Jimenez talked about seeming like the world is burning down around us, but what I'm really concerned about this summer, of course, is fire danger from these fireworks. We had a big vegetation fire in District 4 yesterday, and I know it won't be the last. And while that one wasn't caused by fireworks, I suspect that we will see some this year, given that we're particularly dry this year, and I think we're at big risk in some of our communities. And I know this is a citywide problem, but I will tell you, there are fireworks every night now in my neighborhood. It's obviously stressful for people. It's particularly stressful on our pets. My dog hides in the closet and destroys anything she can get in her mouth for about an hour after she hears even a single firework going off. So we have to deal with her every night. I know that's happening across the city. And of course, there's lots of other issues that arise from this. So I guess my first question is, do we have statistics, data about whether we've increased citations, whether there have been more, what the numbers are now versus what they were before in terms of effectiveness of catching any people who are shooting off fireworks, setting off fireworks?
We do, and thank you for the question, Councilmember. We do, and there are, this last report, since it covers the new year and the Lunar New Year, the data tracks back to that more specifically. So on the tables that are connected to it, it shows to a certain extent the amount of firework usage, but it's specific to those dates. So if we reference back to the last report, it would include those numbers. So last year was an extraordinary year, and I would reference back to the pages that are essentially in the attachments. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me at the moment, but I can grab hold of them if you like.
Okay, I mean, I'd like to, at some point, I guess I'd like to hear some of the numbers and see what we're doing. And I know that you had some good suggestions in the presentation about some ways to improve enforcement. It strikes me that, I think I appreciate the higher fines that were implemented at the end of last year. And certainly the social host ordinance is a good one. But for me, none of those things matter if we can't enforce, if we can't catch people. And what I feel, and I think our residents feel, is that reporting doesn't do any good, that we're not really catching anybody, that people feel some sense of impunity when they behave this way because there's almost no way to get caught. And so we can put all the ordinances in places we want, but if we have no way of catching people, and I know it's hard because I know we have to catch people in the act. What is, when someone makes one of those calls to 311 or submits an online report, what is the action that then happens after that?
So as the report comes in, it collects the data that's inputted by the citizen who's reporting. It's processed then through the staff and through the code enforcement division. I could pass it over to Rachel Roberts, who handles that group, the actual process that they follow is within her group.
Oh, not very good visual here today, but I'll go ahead. So yes, our process, once the complaint comes in, we have to go through a pretty extensive amount of time to sort through the reports that actually have been completed and that we can evaluate for potential warning notice or citation. So once we've gone through that process, then those are reviewed by a supervisor in code enforcement to determine if we can issue a warning notice or if there's enough evidence there to issue the citation. Obviously, if there's any question around that, we do consult our city attorney's office. And then we also take steps to contact any of the citizens who have filed a report that did become actionable to update them on the outcome of their report. So we go through that exercise. We actually started doing firework enforcement in that manner year round. I think we're on the second year now. So it's happening all year, but obviously there's some peak periods where we're getting a lot more complaints around New Year, Lunar New Year, and then 4th of July.
So am I right to assume that it's pretty unlikely that there will be a police response to the report immediately in terms of getting out to where something's happening?
So
I can address that.
okay, go for it. Thanks.
Councilmember, thank you for your question. So I think there was one thing that I wanted to kind of comment on that you asked or you spoke about first, and that was the citation numbers. And what we have learned from the PD side is that most of the times and the days that the bulk of these firework violations are being reported to the police department or to whoever they're going into, those are the busiest times for us in terms of staffing. And so we didn't have historically dedicated staff that was earmarked for fireworks enforcement. And so as a result, if crimes of violence or injury related events came in, staff was diverted to deal with those first. And by the time we were able to have staff available to address the fireworks violation, that could be hours past. And so this year we've gotten budgeted overtime money to have dedicated staff, and we're going to deploy those staff weeks in advance, so that way we can deal with these kind of violations on a smaller scale instead of rolling into a group of 3,000 people with 2 officers. So we're looking at making it more safe for our officers and also dealing with the behavior to address some of these problems of impunity. And then so historically, the violations that we uncovered were just random stops that an officer would make a car stop or be at an event on some other, for some other reason, and then would stumble across some fireworks possession. And so those were primarily the enforcement actions that we saw from the PD because of a couple of the things that I had mentioned. So I think that with the new adoption of a social host ordinance, it will allow the burden of proof to be a little bit more relaxed, so we can really, I think, truly affect the behavior this year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that information. It occurs to me that perhaps similar to what we're doing for some sideshows and what we do for speed traps actually throughout the city, is that if we knew of places that were regular reported or hotspots, we could almost, set up a firework trap in some sense where we've got people already stationed where we know things happen. Although I'm sure that every one of us as a council member would tell you that almost every neighborhood is a hotspot, that we got some data as to where this is happening frequently. There might be proactive approaches, and so having that dedicated staffing might be helpful. So that's good news. And I'll just end by talking about Alviso, which I know is a really difficult, really, especially on the holidays like 4th of July, is almost like a center for people coming to do fireworks, and that's the northern edge of District 4. It's already pretty far away as far as response times. And what we're hearing from the residents there is that people come from out of the area to set off fireworks there in large numbers. And what ends up happening too is that because there's only 2 roads in and out of Alviso, There are people that almost are scouting for police when they come in and waiting till they leave on those streets and then saying, okay, they're gone, now we're safe. So just something to be aware of, that perhaps, some other kinds of ways of patrolling the area, or coming back through even after you've left might actually help us disperse and solve those crowd problems.
Yeah, we have a plan for both of those scenarios this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Arenas?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Estrada, Captain Ta, for the really good work that you're all doing. I know many of us that are at maybe opposite ends, but certainly far away from some of the city center. Unfortunately, we get a lot of fireworks in our district, and I don't know who can claim who has more, but we certainly have a lot of open space, and I think people like to take advantage of that. But I have to admit that when I looked over to D5, it was like firework display, like a legal version of a firework display. It was out of the ordinary, and I don't know if it had to do with the pandemic and people just having a little more time on their hands to do these kinds of things. So I know in the past what you all have done, and I get to hear some of this work plan during PISFAS, during Public Safety Committee. And I know one of the things that had happened previously was some of the letters that were like warning letters that were sent to folks. Even if they, we didn't capture all the information, we didn't have a name, but we had a residence. They were sent warning letters, and I know there were some issues in terms of having an accurate name. But I wonder if these are the same maybe areas or residents that we've seen over time have similar violations or have similar complaints, that we would send something ahead of time and let them know, hey, listen, this year we're working on this host ordinance. You will be liable for any cost incurred to the city if we have to respond, or just reminding them of the penalties once again. Just anything to maybe help deter. Is that something that is within something reasonable that we can do ahead of time?
Just as far as outreach, we're working on the communication plan for that right now. And so pretty much at the moment, everything's on the table. And we are interested in using the data that we have. We want to try to be as proactive this year as possible. If I can ask Erica Ray to comment on just some of the outreach that and how we might be doing things differently, she might be able to provide some insight into the different things that we're trying this year.
Sure, thank you. Erica Ray, Public Information Manager for the Fire Department. Thank you for that question, Councilmember Arenas. I do believe, as Chief Estrada had mentioned, everything's on the table, and I think that is a great idea that we can pursue since we know that these are homes that have been identified as having some fireworks activity, that we can proactively reach out to them with those messages that you specifically mentioned, the increased fines, the social host ordinance, and that communication we can push out to the larger community as well, but definitely target those areas. I'll work with code enforcement on that, since we'll need to collaborate on getting the actual contact information, but I think it's feasible at this point.
Wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, anything that we can do just to reduce, we're still in the pandemic, people still have a bit of time in their hands. And so I'm afraid that we're going to see some of the same display that we saw last year in July. And the other thing that I noticed that our police department has been doing really I know we have to wait until we see the fireworks or a holiday come in to actually move on some of this. And it's very different from sideshows. But one of the things that I've noticed with the sideshow efforts is that Our police department is using their, using their tweets and their social media to show, look what can happen. Look at your cars. We've impounded 5 cars. These could be yours, right? And so I know that your effort really is to educate and deter, and I certainly can appreciate that. But I think we can maybe safely, without showing any residents or anything like that, maybe a stock photo, but this resident received a $2,000 fine or something. Or last year in this area, this resident John Doe received a $1,000 fine. Just so that we can continue to have that out there as circulating in terms of consequences, so that people know come July, there's nothing, no rock that we left unturned in terms of sharing some of the information, and nobody's surprised. So I don't know if that would be possible, but if it is, I'd love for you to consider that, and I appreciate you also considering the letter. I don't envy the work, because it is really, really difficult. It's kind of a whack-a-mole strategy, if you will. And so I appreciate the iterations of strategies and work that you all have maintained over the last couple of years, as far as I can remember. So thank you for all the work, and thank you for keeping us all safe. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Esparza?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to echo my thanks. This is another one of those issues. I don't think there's anybody, any part of the city that is untouched. Although I have sat in Alum Rock in the hills on 4th of July and enjoyed several professional grade fireworks shows in the city's neighborhoods. I wanted to also ask, in terms of the drones and things like that, we do have some areas. I think I will say Alum Rock kind of wins this terrible competition that none of us want to win. But Calm Hill is also notorious for a lot of issues on 4th of July. Is this how we're going to deploy drones in some of these big areas, or can you talk a little bit more about that in some of these big hotspots that we have in our city?
Yes, I thank you for the question, Councilmember. I can address the drone strategy. So at the current way that we enforce the penal code, even with the use of a very clear image or video, without knowing who we're looking at, there's a lot of follow-up investigation that still needs to be done. So I'll give you an example. If we deployed a drone in the 4th of July, it would have to be probably during the daylight where we could actually see the drone. It would probably be a scenario where there's less fireworks going off, because they usually go off at the nighttime hours. And so having a nighttime image, even with a clear face, is going to require several man hours of follow-up investigation to either do a photo lineup or to somehow do a show up. It would be very it would be heavy on personnel time for follow-up investigation. We would be better off trying to roll up in a marked patrol vehicle and identify and cite a offender. So I don't know if that really addresses your question, but I think that as we adopt some derivative of a social host ordinance, that would the burden of proof would be a little bit more relaxed, so we could trace that back to either a residence or some sort of property owner, a tenant, or a landlord. Then the use of a drone for those purposes may be much more feasible. But as it stands right now, with the current penal code and the level of proof that we need to bring forward, the drone would actually cost us more staff time than it would save.
And it would help. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. And are we, I suspect it's the same thing. Are we also looking at closing some streets on a broader level than we have in the past in some of these hotspots?
Yeah, so thank you again for this question. So as you probably might have remembered last year when I was in Foothill Division, we did a couple of very strategic road closures that were very, very effective. And so the captains in those respective areas, I think if it can be done effectively like that, I think it will be done, especially for a very dry holiday such as the 4th of July. There is another strategy that we are going to use citywide that kind of deals with the Councilmember Cohen's suggestion earlier and yours right now. I'd rather not disclose the full extent of those strategies here, but as we do a PSA, I think it'll be pretty obvious that that we're using strategies that we know are going to be effective based on behavior that we've been tracking for several years.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just like to echo my colleagues' comments on, and I did a memo on the next item to have heavy social media outreach to create deterrence, especially on the next item, because that's been effective on some other items. And so now that we move forward on the next item on our agenda on the host ordinance, hopefully we can create more of a deterrent with that. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to say I appreciate the enormous amount of work that's gone into all this, and I know we're about to consider the second host ordinance next, and appreciate that as well. Can anybody tell me sort of if they remember to what extent we've implemented behavioral insights in shaping our messaging in any way to the public?
I'll take that one, Mayor. I think the city manager's office did manage the fireworks campaign previously, and those that were really spearheading it are no longer in that department with the city. But from what I know, behavioral insights has been consulted previously, but we could not find any contracts that showed with any certainty that they were. And so moving forward, what we would like to focus on is just ensuring that the campaign refresh is evaluated for cultural relevancy. And that will be our focus to ensure that the refresh campaign does have that focus on it.
Erica, thank you. And I agree, cultural relevancy is critical and important, but a separate concern, right? And I appreciate you taking a look to see what had been done and recognize that there's been people who were involved and moved on. And maybe it would just help, because I know not everyone's been in this conversation all along, and there's a lot of people who moved into these roles, but if you'll bear with me. The reason why I'm making mention of behavioral insights is, I think many of us are pretty skeptical about our ability to enforce here. And I don't doubt Jason Tall's got something up his sleeve that will be creative, brilliant, and have some impact. But I think for the most part, we know if we put a police officer on every street corner, we're going to be chasing a lot of ghosts because these things are lit off at night. And then the 17-year-old lit them off, is run off somewhere, or maybe not, depending on the setting. But it's very, very to chase folks down. And we wish we had enough firefighters and enough police officers to be everywhere. We don't. And enforcement is never easy. When a couple of folks named Sustine and Thaler published a book called Nudge back in 2008, and some different cities throughout the world started picking up the basic notion, which was that as people, we don't always behave rationally. And that simply informing people that there's, for example, a safety risk using fireworks is probably not necessarily the most effective way to get them to stop using fireworks. Or telling them that they might get caught is probably not the most effective way, particularly when they don't really believe they're going to get caught. And increasing fines doesn't really have much impact because, of course, people don't believe there aren't enough police officers. even in a perfect world with all the budget we had, it would be awfully difficult to catch folks. And so that sort of the belief that we just convey rational messages and that will change behavior is kind of a not very fruitful approach. And there are better ways to convey information to actually change behavior. And so some of it is around choice architecture. For example, in England, when they started deploying this, they figured out that people would save a lot more money for retirement, not if you gave them big tax breaks, but actually if you made it the default option, so that they actually had to choose not to save. Or in the context, for example, of saving water or saving electricity, they found that there was a lot more impact with subtle messages to residents that were focused on social disapproval. For example, telling folks how much water they were using compared to other people in their immediate neighborhood. And if they were using a whole lot more, they could see that what they were doing was out of step with their neighbors. And even more, if there was a way to convey in ways that would enable their neighbors to know how much water people are using. Now, I'm not suggesting we all become big brother and get people tattle on each other. But the point is that social disapproval is a really effective nudge to get people to change their behavior. And so a lot of folks have deployed behavioral insights in ways to try to get behavioral change where we know we're not going to get it because the long arm of the law isn't long enough. And what we saw, this was actually on the work plan, the city manager's office back in 2017 and 2018, we kept asking folks. And what we kept getting from, at the time, the folks who were in charge of this effort, who I know are no longer, because I don't think they're with the city anymore, but they kept putting out messages saying fireworks are bad, fireworks aren't safe. And we kept telling them that's not behavioral insights. That's, you're just telling folks what they already know and it's not changing their behavior. So we would be happy to help make partnerships with teams who are working in helping cities with behavioral insights that help craft messages that actually help influence behavior in really positive ways. And I'd certainly volunteer my time to help connect folks to organizations that could help us if we had a willingness to try. But bluntly, I didn't think we really tried, even though it was on our work plan a few years ago. And it's obvious to me that, you know, we're trying a lot of things right now and they're all really hard. And I can't help but think that if there were messages that, for example, let's say we actually had a 311 app that incorporated this, that persuaded folks that neighbors are actually taking photos of them using fireworks. Whether those neighbors are actually taking photos or not, the message that people are hearing that their neighbors are taking photos is a helpful nudge, right? And so I guess that's what I'm really getting at. And the question is, would anyone have the bandwidth to work with us, with organizations like Bloomberg Philanthropies, to try to craft these messages that might actually be more helpful in changing behavior?
Understood. Thank you, Mayor. At this point, you know, Fire and City Manager's Office of Communications are collaborating on this refresh with the City Manager's Office taking the lead on it and Fire supporting. And I'm very happy to bring that forward to our Director of Communications, that suggestion. And at this time, we have yet to put together, you know, our solicitation for vendors to help us with this. So now would be a great time to explore that as a possibility, so we can see if we can, you know, fit it into our budget and our work plan at this time.
Okay, great. We'd be happy to hustle on our end to see if we can get some folks who can offer some good insights for us. Thank you, Erica. Appreciate your efforts. All right, any other comments or questions?
Mayor, Robert Sapien, Fire Chief, if you don't mind, I'll interject a little bit.
Yeah.
Not all of us have moved on since 2017. So we did actually have council direction back then. We did use the consulting services that were available. The messaging that we came up with was market tested at that time, and the recommended messaging did come back to council. And we deployed it for a couple years, and in fact, some of the materials we have still reflect some of that messaging. I think it's important to recall that we made significant progress between 2017, 18, and 19. And it's important, I think, to recognize that 2020 was absolutely extraordinary in terms of the volume of fireworks that hit the public market. And this was true across the entire nation. In consult with fire chiefs from across the country, 2020 was a marked change in behavior, a marked change in the flood of fireworks that ended up in the streets. And so I think we're in somewhat of a reset mode, trying to figure out if that's going to be sustained. My concern is that if underground vendors made a tremendous amount of money last year, I don't think they're going to be absent from the market this year. And so I think we do have an enforcement challenge on the front end. But certainly to your question, in terms of as we refresh our strategies, I think the public messaging is a key part of that, and certainly we'd be willing to employ available tools.
Chief, you said that we've made considerable progress prior to 2020. How are we measuring that?
So one is just basic field knowledge. My principal personal indicator was I monitored closely over the 3 years by just active presence in the field, the time period where firework volume was present. And I can say in 15, 16, I would estimate that they started in late May and persisted to a climax on July 4th. And in the latter years, 18 and 19, I saw that time period reduce significantly down to mid-June to July 4th, and that was true. And I think our best year, frankly, was in 2019, but for some significant hotspots that were already mentioned, like Alviso and a few other neighborhoods that we know are challenging. But I do feel that we made significant progress. Certainly our fire activity reflected it. Our emergency response activity reflected it. The strain on our resources during peak periods reflected it. And so I think I just want to sort of put on the table today that 2020 was a significant step away from that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. There's an aberration in 2020, and we'll put the outlier aside. I'm just trying to understand. So is it based on the number of fires and calls for service? Is that?
Yeah, overall activity and just frankly what we could see in terms of fireworks activity. And again, kind of a gauge on the volume of fireworks over extended periods of time. And it was my personal observation that the time had reduced significantly leading into 2019. And again, last year is a complete outlier.
Okay, I would just suggest if there's some indicators we're using that are actually measuring at least some proxy for fireworks activity, whether it's complaints or fires that appear to be started by a firework, whatever it might be, I really think it would be helpful to elevate that in some way, because the perception from our public, putting 2020 aside, depending on where you live and where the fireworks were bad that particular year, right? I mean, we know this is all anecdotal, but a lot of folks in the public think we haven't been making progress. And if we have, then it would be good for us to talk about that, right? And because, I can remember several articles in the newspaper talking about, hey, we're not actually citing very many people. We're not arresting anybody, whatever it might be. And so to be able to say, hey, we're doing things that actually work would be helpful. And it also would be helpful to guide us into understanding what we should or shouldn't be doing. And so is there a way we can make that, I hate to get back to sort of the dashboard kind of language to channel Councilmember Mahan, but is there a way that we can make that more overt, where we're actually looking at this data that's telling us if the problem's getting worse or better?
Yeah, we can certainly work on that kind of metric. The big system things we can generate, fairly easily, call volume, that kind of thing are metrics we follow already. The challenge is there's different indicators that can be difficult for the public to understand. So for example, in 2021, we're confronted by a severe drought condition, and we're already seeing high fire activity. So in the event that we had fewer fireworks on July 4th in 2021, you might actually see more fires than we had in 2020, right? So that's going to be, from a perception standpoint, it's going to look like we had our worst, fireworks season ever. And so I think it's a difficult story to tell, no matter what. But certainly we can look for some baseline data that might help us articulate what's happening out there.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And I understand my time's up. I had a recollection of that market, what you described with regard to messaging in the market, and I saw the messaging, and it seemed to be very straightforward messaging about safety and fireworks. And I, be happy to talk with you more offline. It didn't suggest to me there were behavioral insights, but anyway, I'd be happy to talk more offline. Okay, let's, any other questions? All right, let's vote then on the motion.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Morales,
Yes.
Cohen, Orozco.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Thank you. Davis,
Yes.
Garza,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Ricardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Item 4.2 is the social host ordinance and the schedule of fees and charges for illegal fireworks. There's a presentation.
And can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to thank, once again, Mayor Ricardo and the council for this opportunity to offer this recommendation. Once again, I'm Hector Estrada, the Deputy Chief overseeing fire prevention in the fire department. And this presentation, outlines a recommendation to amend Title 10, the social host ordinance, and to the 2020-2021 schedule of fees and charges for illegal fireworks. This presentation is in response to the direction received on October 27th, 2020. And a copy of this memorandum is available on the city website and via link on the city council agenda, and it is item 4.2. So the recommendation for approval, this is the ordinance, and for amending chapter 10.17 of title 10 of the San Jose Municipal Code. And this addresses a couple of areas in the code. And the first is it defines key components of the ordinance, and it expands the liability of the social host and property owners for gatherings where illegal fireworks are being used. It defines actual social host, public versus private property. It defines and imposes expanded liability to the social host, and it establishes a billing mechanism. It adds the administrative appeal process description, and it amends the 2020-2021 schedule of fees and charges. The municipal, if approved, what has changed, and I'll start by saying what doesn't change, and that is the municipal code will continue to ban the sale, use, possession, discharge, and storage of fireworks. Additionally, it'll extend the responsibility for violation of social host to the social host and property owners who host gatherings where illegal fireworks are used or discharged. The social host is defined, and it includes, but is not limited to, the person who rents, leases, or otherwise has possession of the property, and also if they organize, sponsor, or conduct or allow and have control over the access of the property where fireworks are being used. Strict liability is defined, and that extends liability for a wrongful act irrespective of the intent or knowledge and or negligence and lack of thereof in committing the wrongful act. It authorizes the reimbursement for emergency response services to be billed back to a person or persons responsible for the actual response cost resulting from the use of illegal fireworks. I'll talk a little bit about the response charges. Within the ordinance, the schedule of fees and charges will be amended, and it will read that the fireworks response fee is the actual cost of response. Therefore, providing that the schedule will always be up to date and consistent with the authorized reimbursement for emergency response services. And this is including and without limitation, fire and police personnel and equipment responding for each incident. The bill of charges shall be served by the fire chief and or police chief, and it will be provided to the responsible party. The appeal process will include information on the bill of services to the person being charged, and that they may request a hearing before an appeals hearing board. So what will be different? Currently, the fines are levied against the person using fireworks or the owner only if they had knowledge of the fireworks. So the level of in order to assess liability is pretty high, and it's difficult. So the proposed amendment will make the social host of the property owners responsible for any fireworks violations that occur on their property or at their gatherings, even if the host or property owner did not discharge the fireworks. Moreover, it will make the social host and property owners jointly and individually liable for all emergency response costs associated or caused by the fireworks violations. The owner or tenant of the premises is often in the best position to control and knows or should know of the possession, manufacture, storage, sale, handling, or use of illegal fireworks on his or her residence or commercial property. The purpose of imposing the liability on social hosts is to encourage individuals who host gatherings to exercise greater care in ensuring that no illegal activity using fireworks is taking place at their gatherings. And this ordinance is intended to deter people from hosting gatherings where fireworks are and encourage them to prevent their guests from using or discharging fireworks. In summary, this proposed ordinance recommends, if adopted, in conjunction with the enhanced planned enforcement described in the previous presentation, the higher fines adopted in December of 2020, and the expanded liability with the potential liability for cost response, a framework that has been enhanced to make the use of illegal fireworks truly not worth it. So with that, I would like to extend my recognition to Diana Yuan from the Deputy City, or she's a Deputy City Attorney from the City Attorney's Office, Erica Ray, Public Information Manager, Jason Ta, San Jose PD, Rachel Roberts, Deputy Director of Code Enforcement, Trevor Gold in City Manager's Office, Carolina Camarena in City Manager's Office. And with that, we will take any questions that you have.
Great, thank you very much. Let's go to the public, Mr. Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for this item. This offered kind of some old issues that you haven't talked about in the days before COVID-19. Thank you. It was how to address the future of house when people sell their homes, and that's the way to slowly pass along the message that when people buy new homes, you explain these fireworks ordinance provisions and what's they're expected of them. I think over the next few years, that will have a real important impact on people, and that will make the subtle impression that the mayor was asking about. Thanks a lot for the words of the mayor in his previous item, the way he talked about the issue. It's really the first time I really heard him talk about, how can we talk to the community in subtle terms? And, I'm trying my best, in the little I know, how work at the state and federal level and to address, the trading of fireworks at the state level and the federal level, I think that hopefully is like encouraging signs to young people how they need to start to view this situation and what they can expect of the future of this situation. And, it's an open policy. It's a more progressive, liberal way to understand things. And it's asking them with good progressive liberal practices, to bring out their better persons and their better judgment and better qualities. We're doing our part at this time, and it's asking them to do the same. And, it's a more cooperative effort, and how to learn how to do that. Good luck how we can do that. Thanks for this item, and thank you.
Thank you. All right, coming back to the council, Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. I'll keep it quick considering the discussion that we just had. So I'd like to thank staff for bringing this forward, and I'd especially like to thank Councilmember Sergio Jimenez, who has been really pushing for a stronger response to illegal fireworks. And I wanted to draw a parallel between some of the actions that we've taken on street racing, for example, and what we're going to approve today, hopefully. And what we've seen with illegal street racing was that we looked at entities other than just the participants, besides the drivers who make those possible, the spectators, the promotions, the promoters. And that's what we're doing here, because we know it's not just the folks that are setting off fireworks, it's the hosts, the property owners that are encouraging the parties and really allowing these opportunities or these fireworks to happen. And so it's really about deterrence. We don't want to fine people. We don't want to impose fees. We just want people to stop doing it. It's really that simple. It's don't do it, right? And to the mayor's points in the last discussion, in dealing with human behavior, that we're, hopefully this is one tactic that will be effective. And so I'd like to move approval of my memo, which is to accept the recommendation, and then to add a social media outreach and education campaign specifically to this, as similar to the street racing analogy, where there are those messages that go out, the fines, really pushing those consequences if you get caught, which has been effective in those social media campaigns. In particular, I think PD have done photos of like a car being towed, right? I mean, those visuals have been effective. And so that was really why I submitted the memo, because I saw those parallels. I think this is another thing that frustrates every neighborhood in the city. And so with that, I'll move my memo. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Esparza, would you also incorporate a friendly amendment that all of our offices would be incorporated in that social media outreach?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Foley.
Thank you. I really appreciate seeing this social host ordinance come through, and I'm happy to support it. We have issues in all of our districts, as everyone has mentioned, where these fireworks are being let off, and it's not necessarily, we're not finding the individual who's letting the fireworks off, but the homeowner or the property owner or the neighbor or someone knows about it. And we need to be able to go after the social host, just like we are for the sideshows. I think the deterrence will be tremendous in that. I do have a question though. How are you going to find the social host? How are you going to find who that is? And the second question is, are there exemptions to the property owner? Specifically, many of our school properties have big open spaces, and those are being utilized to let off fireworks. So certainly we're not going to go after a school district for being a social host when they likely don't have any knowledge about it or certainly aren't involved in it. So are there exceptions, and how are you going to locate the social host? Or if you don't want to tell me exactly how you're going to locate the social host because you don't want them to know, that's fine too, but just give me a rough idea.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. So the first question, how are we going to locate the social host? So with the penal code, we have to not only locate but identify the person that discharges the fireworks. With the social host, I'll just give you kind of an example. If you were a neighbor and you either call the police department or you report in on the app that we're going to, hopefully with the adoption of this social host, change that app to really curtail some of the things that we need for any type of enforcement. If you, in that scenario, know that fireworks are being discharged in the backyard of, let's say, 123 Elm Street, we would solicit that information on that app or through the phone line, however that person chooses to call, to be able to support who that social host is. So that's just one scenario that I think will play out very frequently. Most of the time, neighbors know where the fireworks are coming from. They just don't know who exactly is lighting them off within that household. With regard to any exemptions, this social host ordinance is not just focusing on the person lighting the fireworks, but also the people in charge of that hosting that gathering. So I think commonsensically, if we're able to figure out on kind of an open public parking lot or a school parking lot who is kind of hosting that gathering, that would be probably where we would likely take some sort of citation action. So I don't know, though, I can't speak for the city attorney whether or not there are exemptions for government properties or apartment complexes, large apartment complexes, counting parking lots, those kinds of things. So I don't know if there are any exemptions.
Nora, can you help me with the exemption? I'm particularly concerned about schools. I really don't have a concern about large apartment complexes. Those property owners should take liability for it, but I'm concerned about a school. And there are several schools that I can think of off the top of my head who have real problems with this, and the school district is not in a position to prevent it from happening. They don't have police force who's going after it, and the police may be detoured. The police may be somewhere else working with much more serious fireworks situations. So can you give me some comfort that we're not going to go after school districts, or should I ask for a friendly amendment?
Council member, that there's not a specific exemption, and we can, there may be some immunities. We haven't looked at those, but the ordinance as written might very well capture a public property like that because of the definitions. So we can exempt something like a school. We can look at that and try to come up with that exemption if that's the direction from the council. I understand the concern.
Would you like me to request a friendly amendment, or you will just take that as consideration?
We can, before we bring it back, we can do that. I don't know that it needs to be formalized. We can look at it. We'll be coming back for a second review.
Okay.
And deal with it that way.
Okay, thank you. I think this social host ordinance is really, really important. I just don't want to negatively impact somebody that we're going to spend a lot of time reversing ourselves on a decision that we've made. We really want to get to the social host and not penalize a school district for something they're trying to prevent as well. Just that's my thought. Jason, I'm sorry, I don't know your rank, Jason. I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Captain, no.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to embarrass myself. The app, is this going to be on San Jose 311?
I believe we're working with city IT. So if this ordinance is adopted, I think we're going to work with city IT to really kind of go through each of the questions that are going to be asked, and it's going to be very deliberate because what we're looking to do is really make that app actionable. So if people go to that app and they provide ample amount of information in order to support a citation, that can be done pretty much immediately without having to send physical staff out there to verify that. That is the hope that we're looking for, because I think that will very much change a lot of behavior very quickly.
I believe so too. And as soon as you have the app and it's ready to go, please let all of our council offices know, because I'm sure we will include it in our newsletters, and Nextdoor would love to have this information so that they can start going after fireworks. There isn't a day goes by, not right now, because we're starting to hear the fireworks, that we don't hear from folks. Was that gunshot or was it a fireworks? And people will respond, it's fireworks, where is it, where? And they're going nuts already, because it's a serious issue, serious for human beings, serious for pets, and let's just get them let's make our streets safe and go after the social host. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for me.
Thanks, Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Just one thing I was thinking about with the social host ordinance, which I fully support, and am hopeful that this will help, as Councilmember Esparza said, like we've been doing with the sideshows, going after everyone who's kind of involved. One of the things I was thinking about is Airbnb hosts. I'm hoping they would be liable, and I want to make sure that we reach out to Airbnb to make sure to let them know that their hosts in San Jose will be liable for these things, so that they can make sure to include that in their list of rules or in their fees and charges for their properties. So I think that might be something that could help have some deterrent effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Khan?
Just to follow up on Councilmember Foley's question about public property, school property, I guess as I read the ordinance here, it talks about public and private property. For example, I assume it would apply to people in a parking lot at a strip mall or shopping center after hours when stores are closed and people are gathering there. So we would want to, is that the intent, is to hold liable people who own property where people might come that don't live on that property, even though there's obviously no intent by the property owners to want that happening on their property. And I mean, I guess the other question about public entity, public parks, playgrounds, sports fields. So we were saying the city would be liable if someone were on a playground or park.
No, the city would not be liable. The effort was to capture social hosts on those properties. There may be a need to, the private property is different, and I don't know what the council's intent is on that right now. A private property owner is captured if fireworks are going off on their property. For example, a strip mall owner. The definition of property along with social host would capture right now, it looks like, public properties. It was with the intent, as I say, to somebody is saying, oh no, it was going off in the center of the street, and so it wasn't my property. That's what we're trying. That was what the idea was, that we understood we were to capture, but there may be a problem definitionally.
Yeah, because in your definition under social host, it says social host includes the person who owns, rents, leases, or otherwise has possession or use of the property. And it also says person who organizes, supervises, sponsors, etc., the fireworks gathering. So our intent, I think, should be that people, the C definition of social hosts, not necessarily the A definition of social host, because that one includes public and private property, which then is defined as pretty much any property owned by anyone, water district property, school property, county property, city property, right?
Yes.
I guess I'm just thinking maybe we need to clarify what our intent is and make sure the language is clear about who is responsible in what circumstances.
Yeah, I understand that. And we will have to go back and make sure that that's clarified. My understanding is it's being looked at that code doesn't usually cite public property owners, but the way it's written, it may capture that. So we would have to clarify that.
And I am curious about even private property owners where people are trespassing on property, right? I mean, there is a question in my mind as to, do we want to hold our businesses responsible when after hours people are on their property doing something they shouldn't be doing? And that is a question I would ask about.
And for that, we would need council direction on that.
Can you repeat that?
Who, me?
Yeah, Councilor, your concern was about people who might be trespassing. Yeah.
Public private property where people are, for example, trespassing in a shopping center that's closed at night, or in a mall parking lot, or or a church parking lot, or whatever. Any place that's not, where the people who are gathering and doing the fireworks are not owners of the property or shouldn't be on the property, but they're there doing the fireworks, setting up the fireworks. This ordinance, as I read it, would hold the owner of that property liable, and I'm not sure if that's our intent.
Could I offer a suggestion on that point? If we just had a simple knew or should have known standard for the property owner. I mean, obviously we need an exemption for public property owners because taxpayers shouldn't be paying these fines. But secondly, that we just have a new or reasonably should have known standard for owners, so that, obviously if it's a homeowner who knew their 17-year-old had a bunch of fireworks stored in the garage and then had his friends come over and light them off, that person obviously would be liable.
Mayor, the provisions right now are for strict liability. So we wouldn't, the whole idea was to not have to prove intent or knowledge or that sort of thing. So for that example, I think the idea was to capture the parents and as property owners, and arguably the social hosts. The idea of a parking lot that may have fireworks going off, I don't know if the fire department or the police department have had situations where it's known that people go into those private parking lots and put off fireworks every year, and if the intent is to capture that if that happens, because we're trying to get the word out to people. So if you own that strip mall where it happens all the time, you should be closing it around those holidays or when that works. I truly don't know what the thought is on that.
Maybe, could I just suggest, I think there's a difference. There's still some gap between strict liability and proving knowledge. We know we don't want to go out and prove knowledge. We'd never be able to establish the case, investigation resources. But a knew or should have known doesn't require knowledge, simply requires that a property owner should have known, for example, that teenagers are coming over every weekend.
Yeah, and I guess my other question really is, what I experience is that people aren't setting it off on their property, but on the street, right? So they're not in their yard, they're out on public streets, but we know what family they're with, or they might be a gathering of friends from the neighborhood. I guess I'm trying to make sure this is capturing even those situations as well. And I know you can say there's a social host, but kids gathering on the street or whoever it is gathering on the street, the social host in that situation, is it based on what house they retreat back into after the fireworks are set off? I mean, that's kind of I feel like there needs to be a little more meat to this ordinance in order to make sure we're capturing the behavior we're trying to prevent.
Well, part of this ordinance does capture streets and those types of areas. So the idea is that someone can't say it didn't happen on my property if they're the social host. It happened on a street, and so they still own it, if you will. So own the liability.
Could I just add just a quick comment? Most property owners are very responsible, but there are, in my experience, there are some properties that will claim ignorance even when they know what's happening year after year on their property. So as it stands, I mean, if that property owner doesn't take any type of action to prevent congregations like that from occurring on their property, even as simply just chaining their parking lot at night, that would help us out, because if you put too many of those ifs and whats in there, we won't really be able to do any type of enforcement. And what we'll see, I fear, is that a lot of those crowds will just go into those areas that we can't do any enforcement with. And so I just throw that out there. I know it's not a perfectly written draft at this moment, but it is with the intent to not have to prove to the landlord that this is occurring, because we had a false alarm program that we used with the police department years ago, where we had to give people the first offense was a warning, and it just became a nightmare trying to figure out when the warning occurred, who was told, and just the logistics of dealing with that. It was very difficult. So I would urge that we keep it loosely written, so that way some level of enforcement can be done automatically through the app. I think that's the intent that we're looking for.
Okay. I mean, just wanted to raise those questions and make sure that we're thoughtful about how it's written and who will be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Arenas?
Thank you. I will be supporting the motion on the floor, and I wonder if at some point or another, I love this step in terms of trying to have more accountability. And this social host is definitely one of those steps that I think we need to take. The other step is a spectator fine. And I don't know if we've thought about that in the same way, you know, as Councilmember Esparza was talking and drawing a parallel between sideshows and fireworks. Is this something that is feasible, or is this something that we've tried before and this just hasn't worked?
I can answer that from PD's perspective. We have not looked at that, I don't think, for the fireworks behavior, but I do know that we use that, as you had mentioned, for the speed racing. I think with spectator for the fireworks, it would it certainly wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, especially if you can show proximity to the actual firework. Let's say, for example, if it's happening on the end of a cul-de-sac or something like that, and a whole bunch of people are out watching.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about like those shopping centers that you were just discussing, as well as I was thinking about my own district, and the churches out here are just enormous, have enormous grounds, and so there's a lot of folks who use those parking lots, and typically there's only one, you know, two ways, one way in and one way out, and so I think that could be the next step in terms of holding people accountable. I would also be interested in figuring out, the mayor talked about having some insights on behavioral modification, like what really works around this. I think we're just trying to figure out what works. I don't know that we found the actual answer. I hope this is part of it. But I think it's also trying to figure out what behavior modification strategy works for this particular item. It might be different for my sideshows completely, but I think we need to start being strategic about what has worked in other cities, what could work for our city, what campaigns have worked effectively, and what can we extract from that learning from other larger cities. I was going to ask, I am going to ask about the landlords who have tenants. Would this be a justifiable reason for an eviction? Because I'm wondering if, this is going to create that. And if it is, if there's that potential, I would say that we don't send the fees or don't send the notices until our moratorium ends, so that we don't create that conflict beforehand. Have we thought about how this impacts how the rental agreement, how we can integrate maybe damage to, typically it's damage to the apartment, and I don't know if this would include that. So I guess I'm wondering, I don't know if Nora or somebody from housing, how would this work? Could this be a reason that the landlord could evict a tenant over?
Well, it might depend on the lease, but if the lease has a provision in it that you not violate the law or something like that, it may very well.
Mm-hmm. So typically there's 13 reasons under the tenant protection ordinance, and none of those include that anything to do with, oh, and actually no, I lied, it says criminal activity. So this would be considered criminal? Would this be considered criminal, Nora?
It's a good question. Well, this particular ordinance may not, but if there was a citation, a criminal citation, and Captain, you might be able to help me out here, and we cited for that, that might be. Rachel, do you have any thoughts on that also?
I just know that up until now, all of our citations have been administrative. When you start to cite an individual, I think that's when it gets into more of that criminal type of citation that Captain Taw would know more about.
Mm-hmm.
We can do citations for municipal codes as well as penal codes with a citation form. But I will say from an enforcement standpoint, we would probably end up defaulting to this ordinance because of the standard is going to be a little bit less than what the penal code is calling for. And I just want to comment once about the practicality of police responding to, let's say, a large school parking lot or a parking lot like we had talked about just recently. Unless we have some specific operations plan, it really kind of defaults back to our basing policing staffing model. And without those dedicated enforcement, the practicality of us going out on a weekend night to enforce something that is occurring in a parking lot it's possible, but the likelihood is very, very improbable. So I do think the devil is in the details with the ordinance and how it's written, but from just a general policing perspective, that probably will very rarely, if ever, happen unless we're doing this enforcement plan that we're planning this upcoming 4th.
Well, I'm sorry, council member, I'm not sure if your question was social host or some other crime related to fireworks.
No, it was related to the social host.
Okay, yeah. So this is administrative, but I don't know, it might depend on lease terms, but this is not criminal in that sense, it's administrative.
Okay, so this wouldn't constitute a reason for an eviction, it sounds like. I guess if we can just vet that and see if there is. I know, I apologize, I didn't send this to you ahead.
No, that's fine.
Typically, I do. but you know, it occurs to me that there's a lot of folks who are renting, and so I just want to make sure that we figure out how we're lining those things up, and if it does constitute a reason for an eviction, that we align it with our moratorium so that we don't create evictions ahead of time. And then, and so the other issue I wanted to talk about was notice. How are we noticing these landlords or property owners? Are we somehow sending a letter to each and every person in the city of San Jose, or is this just a social media outreach?
Would you like me to take that one, Chief Estrada?
Sure, we talked about it earlier today, so thanks too.
So we have a variety of outreach channels identified for this. So many of them carry over from our campaign this year. That would involve community stakeholder groups. So we've provided tailored toolkits to each of them. Our council members included print signage on fire stations, community centers and libraries, digital.
So this is, Erica, this is kind of typical outreach marketing plan, not a specific letter to all of the landlords per se in the city of San Jose.
So we have not discussed a blanket letter to all residents at all. So
great. What I was thinking is that we could use the networks that we have available to us through our housing department to maybe help us provide that notice to tenants and landlords alike. I don't know, I think every landlord, I mean, every property owner certainly gets a tax bill. And I don't know if we can work with the county to insert something that talks about this new ordinance that every property owner would be responsible for, and making that really clear, or working with landlords in case, you know, once you vet out this question, whether this is a reason for an eviction, that we could encourage landlords to integrate that particular wording or that particular verbiage into their rental agreement for example, lighting fireworks in the parking lot or blah, blah, blah. I just think that not only is that a way to inform, but I think it's also a way to deter folks. So we're kind of doing two things at the same time. I don't know if any of these things are possible, but I think we need to use what we have available if it's not too, if it's reasonable and it doesn't create a burden on us, to use some of the networks or some of the paths that we already have, as well as for our businesses that we know have some complaints over the years, that we also use our business license tax process to inform them of the new of this new ordinance that now they would be responsible for. I think we have to go beyond just social media for property owners and landlords, so that they know exactly how to change how they're going to prepare for these upcoming holidays. If they don't know, they're not going to put that chain in that parking lot that Captain Todd that you mentioned, that would be really helpful. Or the churches wouldn't, you know, they're going to say, well, it's out of our hands. People are coming onto our property. We're not able to control that. But if we let them know that they would be responsible, then they might hire a security guard for that night or for that weekend, just to ensure that there aren't any folks who are trespassing. I'm not saying this is feasible for every property, but I think that we have to give proper notice so that we give those landlords and tenants an opportunity to modify their behavior in a way that will be helpful to all of us. So, you know, that's my feedback. I hope that we can follow up, Nora, offline about the eviction piece. And then hopefully Erica and Rachel, maybe we can talk offline as well in terms of how do we inform some of the landlords and property owners, so that they could also, listen, it would jolt me as I was listening to the mayor when he was talking about the water rates and the water usage or the electricity usage. You know, we're all a little competitive, and it does create a, what? I am using more water this month? Absolutely not. The Smiths will not beat me this semester on that. So I think it's a way to really change behavior, and it's might be really slight, but we have to use I think we have to really be proactive about and strategic about all of these efforts that we're making so that they lead to the kind of modification that we want. And so far, I feel like maybe in the past, we just kind of, it's a dart in the dark kind of a thing. And we're trying to see what is going to work. So I'd love to see a more strategic method and maybe work plan, part of the in part of the work plan when you go back to PISFIS, so that we can see some of that and how that adds to the behavioral modification that we want. So those are my comments. Thank you, everyone. I know this is a really tough issue. You know, obviously this is our second item on this issue. You know I know how difficult it is. It must not be easy for all of you to come up with some of these strategies. I know that this is, I'm hoping is going to be a very effective one where we hit people in their pockets, and most people don't like that. So hopefully we will see behavior modification by the next holiday that we have, and then preparing for the one that's coming up in July. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Praz.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be brief. I wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Esparza. I appreciate looking at how we market the actual penalties here and try to persuade people through that messaging, and also the inclusion of exploring the spectators, just like we did with sideshows. I think that could be a benefit as well. And then lastly, I know a lot of the comments around sort of how do we ensure we're not enforcing this new ordinance on individuals or property owners, for instance, public schools, right, that we don't want to. And I think that part of the challenge there is in police work is described as letter of the law or spirit of the law. And I think that getting to the spirit of it, that's obviously what we're all talking about, is, hey, there's certain people we're not really interested in enforcing this new ordinance on, because we may genuinely believe that they're not necessarily someone that should be cited for that. But there are others that are, and I think if we get too nuanced to try to determine who should we exclude or who should be included, we may get ourselves into deeper trouble, or make the ordinance, I think as Captain Todd was describing, make it not effective. And so I just wanted to hear from Captain Todd, if you could describe, is that your interest, that we sort of keep it more open or broad, as you were saying, and then maybe allow for us on individual bases to enforce it based on the spirit of the law, and not try to get too nuanced as we write the letter of it?
Thank you, Councilmember Perales. I think your question is a very good question, and I do agree with you. I think that if you arbitrarily decide to enforce one way and not enforce another way, that is going to be really bad all the way around. And so if you guys as a council decide to amend how it's written, I think we as police officers will enforce it without a lot of subjectivity. I mean, it's either a violation or it's not. Because if somebody were to call the 311 app or send a violation into the website and note that it was occurring on school grounds, but nothing ever got done, I think that would be a problem for this program. I do think, though, the realities of police really dealing with this type of behavior moving forward with the social host ordinance is probably very minimal. And so my hope was that if we do adopt some derivative of this social host ordinance, it can be integrated into the app, and then the behavior can be changed with a citation that's sent by either another agency or some other agency not of the police department, as we're talking about with all the reimagining work that we're doing with all the police reforms. So I think either way you guys go about it, it just has to be clearly defined, and then the police department will enforce it without any type of letter or spirit. I think if we got a violation, we're either going to enforce it if we can, or if we cannot enforce it, then you know, we come several hours after the fact, we wouldn't be able to enforce it anyway. I hope that kind of answers your question. I think it went off topic a little bit.
No, thank you. It does. It goes in a little different direction. I was thinking that what you were indicating was looking for more flexibility. What you're describing here, though, is if we want to prescribe it, then that way, as officers or whoever is enforcing it can just follow it directly how we prescribed it. In your earlier comments, what I was concerned about was that if we begin to carve out particular areas in the ordinance, then those may be the areas that people are attracted to, right? They may simply say, well, let me just go to schools because I know they're not going to get fined for this. And as long as I can set off the fireworks and get out of there before, anybody comes to me, then I know I'm in a safe zone, and I'm not necessarily, I'm not putting anybody in jeopardy, including myself, right? My landlord, or whoever it may be. And so that's what I was concerned about, and didn't want to now attract certain people to areas that they believe are sort of hands off.
Yeah, and I do think that will occur. People are very creative. And so if they know that we won't do any type of enforcement action in those areas, whether it be through the app or whether it be through physical enforcement, we should expect that they will go there. And then so I think it would really make this this social host ordinance ineffective unless we have physical now enforcement again.
And let me just jump in there. I don't think that's the intention, and I don't think that's how it would necessarily play out, because if someone went to a schoolyard and it was putting off fireworks and had people around doing that, they would fall under the definition of social host. And so if we could figure out who that person was, we could still go after that person. The question would be, would the property owner be liable if it's a school district? And so I think we can probably address that when we bring this back. But I think that situation would be covered under the definition of social host.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Captain. I do think it's been good to hear all the different comments, and I think as we've been discussing, this is sort of a first iteration of it here, and likely will have to be adapted over time. And so, but I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Sparson?
Thank you. Yeah, I likewise appreciate the discussion that we've had, and I suspect we'll see a few edits and think it through a little bit more. I actually, just to give my 2 cents, I think we do need to be mindful of pushing this traffic to schools, because if it's happening at schools, then we should have a discussion with the schools about how property is secured on 4th of July. It's an issue that we deal with on our city property as well. As folks know, Calm Hill, there's public property in a park there, and we look at different solutions every year ourselves as a city to prevent some insane stuff going on over there. And so, we need to look and realize that the rules that we pass will apply to ourselves, and we don't want to trade one problem for another. And having said that, I also wanted to just give my 2 cents about apartments. In a previous life, I worked for the Red Cross, and who offers a service that many folks maybe don't know. Anywhere in the country, the Red Cross has something called a disaster action team. where usually fire dispatch will call, and whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., a group of Red Cross volunteers will go out at the request of fire to help fire victims, provide clothing, provide medication, provide a place to stay as people kind of figure out what the next steps are and get some help with those next steps as they need that. And in that capacity, I've gone out, I've seen a 24, I was just talking about this the other day, I've seen a 24 unit apartment building go down like that because of the actions of one tenant. And so that's something we need to be mindful of, as well as the actions of one tenant can really impact, you know, everybody who lives in the building. Maybe they didn't intend for that to happen, but as soon as you do something that endangers folks, you know, we really want people to think twice. And I get it that we don't want to, we need to be mindful of consequences, but we also want people to stop and think. And I know it's a fine line. And I'll never forget, one of the gentlemen at this unit, at this building, had literally just moved in right before the fire and had lost all of his belongings on his first day in his new home. And that's, you know, for most people, fireworks are a nuisance, but they can also be a fire danger, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Just a question for Nora. On a strict liability standard, I know sometimes these do get challenged on due process grounds. And just from a fairness standpoint and sort of a public perception and support standpoint, as well as this potential legal challenge, wouldn't it make sense at the very least to ensure that the police duty manual would be modified to guide discretion of police officers so that strict liability for hosts doesn't result in a lot of, you know, citations where I think everyone would agree this is a person who didn't know and could not have known?
You mean host as the property owner, not host as the person putting off.
Exactly.
We can look at that also. These have all been good questions that have been raised, and when we bring this back, we'll include a memo how we've attempted to address some of these questions, the eviction questions, the public property questions, your question, Mayor, on whether or not there's a way to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we have a motion, I believe.
We do.
Let's vote.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Owen,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Davis,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Ricardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, public service announcement. My great ambitions of being able to wrap things up before the dinner hour have been dashed. We have 2 more items left on the agenda. Lori is ready to go. Are there any objections if we just try to wrap this all up? Go forward.
Let's do it.
All right. I mean, hearing no objections. All right, Lori, you're up. Item 6.1 is amendment.